For further analysis on this story, I'm joined by Jonathan Offei-Ansah. He is an Africa Affairs analyst. Great to have you here with us on TRT World. What the RSF is doing is mind-boggling, isn't it? On the one hand, it is
It
agreeing
is.
to a humanitarian truce, but on the other, it is intensifying, escalating its attacks across the country, in fact, even launching drones on the capital, Khartoum. So it seems to me this agreement that came from the RSF on this humanitarian truce, it's almost an effort to deceive the Sudanese people.
Exactly, absolutely. And I mean, we know the history of the RSF. No, since the war began, there have been so many false doors. I mean, there have been so many announcements of humanitarian ceasefires just to open corridors for humanitarian aid to be sent to the affected areas and affected civilian population. But each time that humanitarian ceasefire is broken. Okay, so what he just said now, I mean, he agreed to a humanitarian ceasefire now, but still firing drones on Khartoum and elsewhere. So I don't believe a word that Dagalo says.
Okay, when it comes to the upcoming events that perhaps can unfold in the country right now? Because, of course, the humanitarian situation is worsening by the day. We are getting horrific reports coming out of places like Fasher and Tawila. Now, Tawila is the place where people who are fleeing Fasher are trying to go. What do you think the international community needs to do about the plight of people trapped over there?
Well, the international community have been making noises. Look, the U.S. Senate, have voiced their concerns. The AU is there. We have the IGAD. But you see, the international efforts, have been fragmented so far. Okay, so that creates some latitude for either side. I mean, the Sudanese army or the RSF to do whatever they like. So until there is a unified, concerted, international effort, okay, I mean, no matter what they do or say, will amount to much.
Right, and of course, we have been hearing from officials who are present on the ground right now trying to help these people flee from the area. But when it comes to the food situation, Jonathan, it's absolutely horrific what's happening there right now because reports are telling us that the people in those regions, Al Fasher and those who are fleeing to Tawila, they are basically relying on pest-infested animal feed, and even that resource is running out now. So, of course, looking at this, it's clear that what Sudan needs right now is a humanitarian truce. It's a ceasefire, and no side is willing to compromise. So do you think the only thing that's going to possibly bring about an end to this war is an intervention by the international community or perhaps by U.S. President Donald Trump himself?
Well, it's an intervention. Look, and you mentioned Donald Trump. Look, we know how transactional Donald Trump is, right? If there's nothing in it for his country, he doesn't want to know. I mean, he intervened in the war in Congo, in the Eastern Congo, involving the M23 rebels and Rwanda. He intervened because he wanted a slice of Congo's vast mineral wealth. Okay, but when it comes to Sudan, I mean, what has Sudan got to offer apart from gold? Okay, so I will take Trump out of the equation. Yes, though the US could play an important role, but Trump as a person should be out of the equation. But the UAE that heavily supports the RSF should be made to wield this influence on the RSF, right? To at least observe that humanitarian ceasefire for food aid and other aid to get to the suffering civilians. And on the other hand, too, we have Egypt. Egypt, which heavily backs the Sudanese army. I know that the Sudanese army under General Bohan will be ready, will be prepared to observe any humanitarian ceasefire. So the Uganda government should be made or to bring its influence, its force to bear of the Sudanese army. So we have Egypt on one hand and the UAE on the other hand. So they must bring their influence to bear on the side they support so that they'll be able to create this ceasefire and open the humanitarian corridor to alleviate the suffering of the affected civilians.
Fascinating insights, Jonathan Offei-Ansah. Thanks very much for joining me here on TRT World. Appreciate your taking out the time.